because we should deal in a very sensible, concerted way. I don't think we should panic about it. I don't think we should deal with it in a crisis way, the way some people do. But I do think it's something we have to take very seriously and very much part of the agenda. And last week, I talked about energy independence. And a lot of the same ideas I have for energy independence, I would have for how to deal with the effect that human beings are having on the atmosphere. Which means we have to start going to a lot of alternative sources of energy. We have to expand ethanol the way Brazil has per capita expanded. With the use of other biofuels, the use of other sources in addition to corn, we're capable of doing it. We have a country like France that I used before as a bad example for healthcare, but there are, like everything else, there are things that other countries do right, things we do right, things we can borrow. France, 80% of France's electricity comes from nuclear power. Only 20% of Americans. And America can do something about it, looking around 15% over the next 10 years. Nuclear power is something that we haven't licensed in 30 years in America. China is building 40 nuclear power plants. India, we just made a deal with India to do nuclear power plants. That's something that we have to expand because it is neutral with regard to emissions. And it is something that even the former head of Greenpeace now embraces as not the only. See, one of the things that's wrong here, there is no silver bullet. There is no one thing that I can say to you, this is what we're going to do in place of the things that are polluting the environment. But if we do each one of these things in proportion, we will be able to solve this problem. Take us 5 to 10 to 15 years to do it. We'll be able to do it. We should also take the clean coal carbon sequestration process and make sure we help it. And the government here needs to help it to become more cost effective. We have more coal reserves in the United States than they have oil reserves in Saudi Arabia. Problem with coal is it has a big impact on the environment. There are processes to clean coal, so it has considerably less impact on the environment, and even less than some other forms of energy. We should get those processes to be cost effective. Hydropower, solar power, wind power makes up a little over 7% of our needs now. We should target that for like 15 to 20%. There are ways to do that. Digital grid, which would allow you, we think of solar power as just helping an individual house or building, right? But if we can figure out how to have it contribute to the grid, we can help everybody. We can figure out how to store it. Solar power, wind power, hydroelectric power, increase that. Conservation. Put an emphasis on conservation. Don't pretend to people that this can solve the whole problem any more than ethanol can solve the whole problem, or nuclear power can, or hydro, or whatever. But you can make maybe a contribution of 10, 15 more %, which are much more effective methods of conservation. And I probably missed a few others that would have to be encouraged. But the idea is the United States government should look upon energy independence as a project as big as putting a man on the moon, which is what we accomplished in the 50s and the 60s and the early 70s, before you were born. Yeah. I'm too young to remember all this. But I remember a lot because it's a great little example for all of us. The Soviets, put a man in space before the United States. America was very embarrassed. During the Cold War, America was very, very embarrassed. Eisenhower was angry. He was president at the time. He got angry. Eisenhower said, we're going to get a man on the moon before they do. Eisenhower started it. John Kennedy expanded it dramatically. Lyndon Johnson, who John Kennedy had fortuitously put in charge of it as vice president, expanded it even more than Kennedy did. And Nixon got it done. That's two Republicans, two Democrats, not fighting with each other, the way they seem to do now, but actually cooperating on something that was bigger than all of them, which was getting a man on the moon. And all the benefits we got from that, the science and everything else. We should now cooperate on being energy independent. And the other thing we'll have to do to deal with it is, we've got to do all these things, and probably a lot more than I have left out. We've got to get China and India and other countries to take it as seriously as we do. Because we could be perfect and have no impact at all on global warming. We could do miracles over the next 10 to 15 years. If they don't, call. It's the same. Doesn't matter if it's coming from the United States, or it's coming from India, or it's coming from China, or it's coming from South America. It's the same call. And the intensity of what they're doing keeps increasing. All our efforts will be for naught. So there's got to be international cooperation, and the president has to lead that. And you're very correct to make it a major, very serious issue. The only thing I would say is we should not react to it as if it were a crisis, because if we do, we will make serious mistakes in distorting our economy. And we won't get requisite changes by the other countries that have to make changes for our changes to be made.